It only took 1 second to pull the trigger, but it's been 3 years, and he still hasn't had a single peaceful night's sleep. 3 years ago, it rained in Arizona at the end of December, as rare as a child who had never cried suddenly sobbing for the first time. The rain tapped quietly on the roof of the patrol car, each drop keeping time with melody Jake never wanted to hear. Inside, he sat twisting a chipped silver lighter between his fingers, eyes fixed on the streaked windshield. The radio crackled. Suspect possibly armed, moving near residential area 12. Skin color, unknown. Clothing, gray hoodie, holding unidentified object. He nodded slightly to himself, muttering, "Tonight won't be quiet." Jake wasn't the kind to panic. He'd stood between 2 rival gangs in a shootout and kept a steady hand. But he had one weakness, unclear moments, when everything blurred between black and white, and there was no time for a second question, like now. The car turned into the neighborhood. The streetlights flickered like the eyes of someone about to fall asleep. The block was deserted. No barking dogs. No lights in windows. Jake slowed down, eyes scanning fast. A sudden movement on the left. Someone had just turned into an alley. Jake stopped the car. He didn't get out right away. One hand rested on his gun, head tilted slightly to hear better. The rain continued falling. Then, through the dim light, a figure appeared, tall, in a gray hoodie, holding something that caught a pale blue glint, walking, not hurried, but not hesitant either. Jake flung open the door and shouted, "Stop! Police! Hands up, turn toward me." Person didn't stop, kept walking, just a slight turn of the head, young face, not scared, just surprised. Then the hand lifted. Jake pulled the trigger. He doesn't remember the sound of the shot, just that everything fell silent. Even the rain seemed to pause for a second. The man's body folded forward. No scream, no struggle, just collapsed. Jake ran to him, every step dragged back by an invisible weight. When he got there, the object still glowed faintly. A phone, on the screen, calling Lisa, customer. Jake dropped to his knees beside the man's body. He shook too hard to check for a pulse. But he already knew there was no one left to save. His name was Ray, 26, a delivery worker for a new app, doing night shifts to save money for audio engineering classes at the state university. He had just accepted a job and, because the map glitched, was calling the customer to confirm the address. He was wearing earbuds, listening to a podcast about lost planets in the universe. He didn't know he was being watched, and he certainly didn't know that turning his head and raising his phone would mean he'd never make that call. Jake sat down on the cold asphalt, rain soaking through his uniform, his eyes locked on Ray's still warm face. No one screamed. No one approached. Only the radio repeated the request for a scene confirmation. Jake didn't respond. He was somewhere else. Somewhere dark, silent, and cold. The official report said, the officer followed protocol upon suspecting the individual was armed and non-compliant. The newspaper headline read, "Young black man shot dead amid gun suspicion." And the story ended there. No one mentioned the podcast that had cut off mid-sentence. No one knew Ray played guitar at church on weekends. No one mentioned Jake, the man who pulled the trigger, now dreams the same dream every night. Ray, sitting in his car, quietly singing along to music before the lights flash, and everything goes silent. After the shooting, Jake never returned to the scene. In fact, he avoided driving through District 12 altogether, as if the place carried a curse. The house where Ray was supposed to deliver the order, the one at the end of the alley with its porch light still dimly glowing, because the owner had stepped out to meet him, became a blind spot in Jake's mind. Every time he closed his eyes, the images surfaced. The brown wooden door, the low fence, the delivery bag left unzipped. Jake was placed on paid leave while the investigation was underway. They sent him for a psychological evaluation. The doctor, white, in his 50s, thick black-rimmed glasses, asked in a flat, clinical tone like reading from a checklist, "Are you sleeping?" Jake said nothing. "Do you dream about the scene?" Jake nodded. "Do you think you need long-term mental health support?" Jake replied, "No, I just need silence for a while." But silence never came. It wrapped around him like a type of static. Never true quiet, but empty spaces filled with memories that hadn't faded yet. He heard Ray's voice, though he never knew what it actually sounded like. He heard the rain from that night, whenever he turned on the shower. He heard the siren of his own patrol car while standing in the middle of a supermarket aisle. Each time, Jake froze, clenched his fist, and tried to steady his breath like a man trying not to explode. He began doing small things. Removed every piece of uniform from his closet, folded them neatly, locked his gun inside a triple-secured metal case, and stored it in the garage. But still, every time he got into his car, it felt like something heavy was in the trunk, even though he knew there was nothing there but a first aid kit and a collapsible shovel. One morning, sitting in the backyard, Jake saw the neighbor's son playing with a toy water gun. The boy pointed it at him and made a shooting sound. Jake didn't respond like a normal adult. He ran inside, slammed the door, and slid down against the wall like a soldier who just escaped an ambush. 2 months later, the department cleared him. He had followed protocol. He could return to duty if he chose to. But protocol was a terrifying word. It rationalized guilt through procedure. It didn't save anyone, and it sure as hell didn't fix anything. Jake submitted his resignation on another rainy morning. No explanation, no farewell letter, just a short form with a trembling signature. No one asked much. Some colleagues avoided eye contact. Some gave him an awkward handshake and walked away. One man patted his shoulder and said, "You'll get through this." But Jake knew some things don't pass. They just sink deep and wait until you're weak enough for them to surface and strangle you. One evening, Jake stood in front of Ray's house. He didn't knock, didn't dare. He just stood there, holding an envelope. Inside was a hastily written note. No return address, no apology, just a single line. "I didn't look closely enough. I didn't listen long enough. And I don't deserve to be forgiven." After 10 minutes, he slipped the letter through the mail slot, didn't look back. Ray's father was the one who found the letter. He kept it for 3 months, told no one. In the civil lawsuit the family filed against the department, he never mentioned it, not because he forgave, but because he didn't know what to do with a half-hearted apology from the man who ended his son's life on reflex. Jake started attending group therapy at a community center. No one there knew he'd been a cop. He introduced himself simply. "Jake, insomnia, nightmares. I hate the sound of rain." The group leader, a woman named Margot in her late 60s, didn't press him. She only said, "You can talk when you're ready." Jake wasn't ready. But one day, a young man in the group shared how he once caused a fatal accident while driving distracted. Jake suddenly stood up. His eyes were red, voice hoarse. "I once pulled the trigger on a gun, thought I was protecting someone, but all I did was kill a kid who was making a phone call." The room went silent. No one said, "I understand," and Jake was grateful for that. Because when you carry the weight of killing the wrong person, the last thing you want to hear is, "I understand." Jake started writing. Not a memoir, not a confession, just scattered notes about Ray. He learned more about the young man, that he liked indie music, played guitar at church, had once dated a girl named Marissa, and dreamed of opening a home studio after graduation. Each detail cut deep, not because it was cruel, but because it was alive. Jake had killed a living, breathing person. not a suspicious silhouette, and he hadn't known that until Ray was already gone. Each time he finished writing, he burned the page, didn't keep anything, not out of shame, but because it was the only way to let it survive, in ash, smoke, and memory. 3 years later, Jake works as a volunteer at a nighttime rescue shelter. No gun, no badge. He helps homeless people find warm places to sleep, hands out food kits, and sometimes just stands on a street corner building a fire to keep others warm. One cold night, a boy approached him and asked, "Mister, are you a firefighter?" Jake chuckled softly. "No," he replied. "I'm just someone who let a man die in the rain. And now I just want to help someone else survive until morning." The boy nodded, didn't ask anything else. And that was the kindest thing anyone had ever done for Jake, not asking anything else. Jake couldn't remember the last time he truly smiled. Not the kind of polite smile expected by social norms, but that lightness in chest, that feeling people call being alive. He had learned how to exist without it. Each day became a journey through memory, not to forget, but simply to not be drowned by it. One night, while distributing meals to the homeless, Jake met a disheveled woman in her mid-30s with bruises on her face. She didn't say much, just took the food bag. But when Jake offered her a thin jacket, she looked at him for a long moment and asked quietly, "Have you ever lost someone?" Jake didn't know how to answer. Eventually, he said, "I lost someone I never truly knew, and that made it worse." That sentence haunted Jake for days, because he understood maybe the deepest pain isn't just losing someone, but losing the chance to know them, to understand them, to listen. Ray never got the chance to explain why he was there. Jake never gave him the time. Just 1 second. One more second could have changed everything. In the second year after the shooting, Jake received a small package, no return name. Inside was an old keychain engraved with Raymond T. and a handwritten note. "Some deaths make you angry, but my son's death left a void. Don't fill it with self-pity. Do something with it." No signature, but Jake knew who it was from, and for the first time in 2 years, he cried like a child. After that, Jake began attending community talks on police reform, not as a speaker, just someone in the back row, listened to stories he might have once doubted. He listened to black men describe how guns were drawn on them for reaching into their pockets. He heard the trembling voice of a woman who lost her husband for a glance at the wrong time. Each story was like a shard of glass, reflecting the moment Jake stood in the rain, gun drawn, heart like steel. One day, the event organizer invited Jake to speak. The room fell silent as he walked to the front. No notes, no speech, just his eyes steady. "I used to be a cop. I believed in protocol, in threat assessments, until the day I pulled the trigger. And the young man was just holding a phone. No knife, no gun, just a call he never got to finish." He paused, then added, "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I'm here so no one else has to stand where I stood, with the blood of a man who never got to say he was just doing his job." Afterward, someone emailed Jake, a law student who had almost dropped his major in criminal justice reform, wrote that Jake's story convinced him to stay. A mother who'd lost her son to a mistaken shooting admitted she had once hated Jake, but now she only felt pain because he, too, was a victim of the system. Those words didn't heal him, but they gave Jake something new. Responsibility was no longer a burden. It became the reason to go on. Then, one day in the late fall of year 3, Jake received an invitation to a memorial concert for Ray, organized by his friends. He didn't know if he should go, but eventually he did, not as a former officer, not as the one who pulled the trigger, but simply as a human being who needed to witness the life he had cut short. The concert was held in the backyard of a small house, modest but warm. Soft yellow lights, wooden benches, a group of young people playing live music. On a small stage, a photo of Ray, beaming, guitar in hand. Ray's best friend took the mic and said, Ray always said if he couldn't do music, he'd open a little coffee shop where people could talk about things no one dared to. He believed music and listening could save people. Jake stood at the back. No one recognized him, but tears slid down his cold collar, soaking into his jacket. That night, back home, Jake opened the notebook he once meant to burn. He wrote just one line. He wasn't wrong. I just didn't have the patience to understand it. Jake no longer tried to make up for his mistake, because he understood there is no making up for it. All he could do was live fully within the consequences, by making sure what remained would not be forgotten. One winter afternoon, Jake was handing out bread to a group of homeless people in a park when a teenage boy approached. The kid looked at him for a while, then asked, "Were you really a cop?" Jake nodded. The boy stayed silent, then said, "My dad got arrested by mistake. Lost his job. I used to think cops were demons, but you're not like that." Jake smiled gently, for the first time in years, without a knot in his chest. He replied, "I'm not a demon, but once, just once, I let the demon inside me win, and that was enough to destroy someone's whole life." The boy nodded, said nothing more. They sat on a cold bench, sharing a small loaf of bread. No one needed to say anything else, and no one needed to forgive. They just needed to keep living in a way that made sure it would never happen again. Jake never returned to being a police officer. He didn't become a social activist, either. He didn't claim to be an inspiration or a victim of the system. In truth, he didn't claim to be anything at all. He was just a man trying to keep living, not to move on, but to live with what had happened. He understood some wounds don't heal, but that doesn't mean they have to bleed forever. 1 year after Ray's memorial concert, Jake received an invitation to speak at a local high school. The topic, responsibility in action. The letter came from a civics teacher whose younger brother had once been shot in a similar incident. "I don't believe in the system," she wrote, "but I believe the next generation shouldn't have to learn everything through death." Jake read the letter 3 times, then nodded. He showed up in an old button-down shirt. No badge, no dramatic introduction. He began with a question. If someone didn't mean to kill, but their actions led to someone's death, are they a bad person? The class went quiet. Some students frowned. Some stared out the window. Jake continued, "I'm that person. I didn't wake up that morning wanting to hurt anyone, but I killed a man who wasn't holding a gun, who wasn't doing anything wrong, and there's no way to undo that." A student asked, his voice sincere, "So what do you do now to not go crazy?" Jake smiled gently, not sad, not heavy, just honest. "I tell the story. I say his name. I keep his memory alive. Not because I'm a good person, but because if I don't do it, then that memory dies a second time." That day, as Jake was leaving the school, a boy ran after him. He didn't say anything, just handed Jake a small piece of paper. On it, in messy handwriting, were the words, "I was once mistaken for someone else. They apologized, but I still feel like I'm not fully me anymore." Underneath, a short line, "Thank you for telling your story. It made me feel like I haven't been completely forgotten." Jake kept that note in his wallet for years. It wrinkled, faded, but he never threw it away. Because to him, it wasn't just a thank you. It was proof. When pain is told the right way, it can become a place. where someone else might find themselves. One night, in a small room lined with old notebooks, Jake wrote one final line. I couldn't save Ray, but if telling this story helps someone pause, slow down, think again, then at least Ray didn't die for nothing. Then he closed the notebook, didn't burn it, didn't lock it away. He left it slightly open, like every memory that still needs room to breathe. Not everyone who pulls a trigger is a villain, and not everyone who dies gets to finish telling their story. Jake's story reveals a difficult truth. Pain doesn't only exist on the side of the victim. Sometimes, it slowly burns within the one who caused it, when they have enough conscience to realize they were wrong. What haunts us isn't the blood. It's the last confused glance that never understood what was happening, the call that never went through, a life cut short because someone didn't take one more second, to look closer, to listen longer, to wait just a little more. We live in a world where reflex is often faster than thought, where prejudice clouds truth, and fear robs us of the ability to recognize what isn't a threat. But if we don't learn to pause, to observe, to question, to ask one more time instead of assuming, we'll keep repeating deaths like Ray's, again and again. This story isn't here to condemn a profession, nor to soften the weight of a serious mistake. It's a wake-up call. The system might shield someone from the law, but it can't protect them from their own conscience. And only when a person finds the courage to face their wrongdoing, to carry the memory of the one they hurt, can that death begin to mean something more than just silence. Don't wait until you lose someone to learn how to listen. Don't say, I understand, if you've never truly tried to stand in the other person's place. And don't forget, some apologies may come too late, but what we do afterward, how we live, so that no one has to die like that again, that's what truly matters. If you've ever felt the weight of regret, ever seen someone be misunderstood, or wished someone had just listened 1 minute longer, share your thoughts in the comments below. We read them, we listen, and we believe every story deserves to be remembered. If this video spoke to you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to be heard, understood, or simply reminded they're not alone. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this video. You're not just a viewer, you're a part of the story. We'll see you in the next film, where truth, emotion, and compassion meet.